Hello, my name is Zach Karlstrom, and I did my multimodal research project on nuclear energy and how it fits itself into an environmentally sustainable future. When thinking towards a sustainable future, a key aspect that must be addressed is energy sources. Currently, a majority of electricity in the world is produced through the burning of fossil fuels. In 2019, fossil fuels accounted for approximately 80 to 84% of the world's total energy consumption. There are a couple issues when using fossil fuels as a main source of energy for the world. The burning of fossil fuels releases greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, such as carbon dioxide, methane, and ozone. It is estimated that the burning of coal, oil, and gas is responsible for around 40% of carbon emissions that are put into the atmosphere. These greenhouse gases contribute to global warming and climate change, which threaten all living species on the planet. Fossil fuels are harvested from the earth and are not easily replenished. Oil drilling and coal mining efforts destroy habitats and environments, which lead to unusable land and a loss of biodiversity. Oil leaks from offshore drilling facilities cost billions of dollars to clean up while also harming aquatic ecosystems. Coal mines and natural gas extraction sites are often dangerous for workers and have decimated landscapes throughout accidental fires and explosions. Fossil fuels are also a non-renewable source of energy, meaning they are not sustainable for future energy plans because they will inevitably run out. These issues with using fossil fuels for energy have led global leaders to look for alternative energy sources that are cost-effective, reduce CO2 emissions, and avoid unsustainable practices. A rather controversial energy source that has been implemented across the world is nuclear energy. In light of nuclear power plant disasters and public fear, nuclear energy has faced many critics throughout its implementation into the worldwide energy grid. To get a better understanding of the effectiveness of nuclear power, along with its environmental pitfalls, I decided to do some research on the topic to answer the question, how does nuclear energy fit itself into an environmentally sustainable future? To answer this question, we must first obtain a basic understanding of how nuclear energy works. Nuclear power plants use the process of nuclear fission to produce electricity. Nuclear fission is a reaction where the nucleus of an atom splits into two or more smaller nuclei, releasing energy in the process. The splitting of an atom will then create a chain reaction, resulting in a multiplying effect. Each time the reaction occurs, energy is released in the form of heat and radiation. Within nuclear power plants, reactors use the heat produced through nuclear fission to produce steam. The steam is then used to spin turbines, which activates an electric generator to produce electricity. By harnessing the power of nuclear fission, nuclear power produces electricity while not emitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Now that we have a better understanding of how nuclear energy works, we can compare it to renewable energy sources such as solar and wind. When taking a look at both nuclear power and renewable energy generation, both sources have a negative relationship compared to CO2 emissions. This means that nuclear energy and renewable energy implementations both result in reduced CO2 emissions. Now we must take a look at the pros and cons of each energy source to determine their viability for a sustainable future. Solar energy absorbs sunlight through the use of solar panels to produce electricity. Using the sun as a source of energy gives solar power an edge over fossil fuels and nuclear energy, which both rely on finite resources. While using the sun to produce electricity is clean and renewable, the amount of sunlight an area receives depends on geographic location, time of day, and weather conditions. This makes solar energy impractical, if not impossible, to implement in certain areas of the world. On top of this, solar panels have high costs due to deterioration, production, installation, and maintenance. Many materials used to manufacture solar panels are also harmful to the environment. Wind energy has many of the same benefits and disadvantages of solar energy. Using wind as a source of energy makes wind energy renewable, but it also results in energy production variations based on geographic location and weather conditions. Wind turbines are costly to construct and maintain, while also posing a threat to local wildlife. Comparing nuclear energy to renewable energy sources, there is a clear distinction between energy production uptime. Since nuclear power plants can be running at all times of the day, they can always be producing energy. In order to run at all times of the day, nuclear energy relies on non-renewable resources. The element most commonly used in nuclear fission is uranium-235, which is refined from uranium ore that is mined from the earth. Nuclear energy also produces radioactive waste as a byproduct, which is harmful to the environment if not disposed of properly. Similar to both wind and solar energy, nuclear power plants are costly to construct and maintain. The maintenance of nuclear power plants is especially important to avoid nuclear catastrophes. As an example, nuclear power plants need to be turned off in extreme weather conditions to steer clear of nuclear disasters. When something goes wrong with solar panels or wind turbines, the results are not usually catastrophic. There have been many instances of nuclear power plant disasters throughout history that have left surrounding environments severely damaged. In a recent study completed in 2020, the relationship between CO2 emissions and both nuclear power and renewable energy was analyzed in 16 countries that utilized both energy sources. The study showed that in order to reduce CO2 emissions by 1%, nuclear power should be increased by 2.907%, and renewable energy generation should be increased by 4.902%. Transitioning to costs, the study also reported that, by using averages from the 16 sampled countries, the total generation costs of nuclear power and renewable energy generation are approximately $1.7 billion and $3.97 billion respectively, to reduce 1% of CO2 emissions. These numbers show us that nuclear energy is more cost-effective than renewable energy sources in eliminating CO2 emissions. While nuclear energy is more cost-effective, the negative health and environmental hazards it brings has some environmentalists rally against its use. It is clear that nuclear energy and renewable energy sources both benefit the environment through their elimination of CO2 emissions, but deciding between the two is a challenging issue given their advantages and disadvantages. Another key aspect in deciding whether nuclear energy can be used in future energy plans depends on the general public's opinion of the topic. Preceding World War II, nuclear energy was viewed in a positive light and a necessity for national security. This would be short-lived, as during the mid-1960s, nuclear energy found its first organized opposition and some nuclear accidents started to concern the newfound environmental movement. Conversations about nuclear energy began shifting away from national security and started being centered towards public health and its impact on the environment. Environmentalists began expressing their grievances about nuclear energy, particularly relating to nuclear contamination, power plant accidents, and the handling of nuclear waste. On top of this, the United States government passed the National Environmental Policy Act in 1970, which required the addition of environmental impact statements to outline the effect a proposed project will have on the environment. Public perception of nuclear energy began increasing in popularity during the mid-2000s. With increased attention to the effects of climate change, along with wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, many citizens in the United States pushed for alternative energy sources to replace fossil fuels. While nuclear energy gained traction as a carbon-free energy source, environmentalists still warned of the possible risks of expanding the use of nuclear power. Public opinion about the use of nuclear power is heavily swayed during the events of nuclear disasters. The three most recent nuclear power plant disasters include the 3 Mile Island accident in Pennsylvania, the Chernobyl disaster in Ukraine, and the Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan. After each of these events, public and governmental opinions of nuclear power dramatically decreased. Being the most recent of the disasters, the Fukushima incident still remains fresh in the minds of politicians and environmentalists. On March 11, 2011, an earthquake of magnitude 9 struck Japan, resulting in a considerable amount of damage. Shortly thereafter, a large tsunami swept through the region, destroying millions of buildings and resulting in a death toll of around 19,500 individuals. The Fukushima Daiichi reactors were able to withstand the magnitude 9 earthquake, but the following tsunami damaged the cooling systems in 3 of the nuclear reactors. This resulted in a partial meltdown of the fuel rods and multiple explosions from the buildup of hydrogen gases. The nuclear disaster resulted in the release of radioactive particles into the air, which led to the evacuation of the immediate area surrounding the power plant. Over 100,000 people were forced to evacuate their homes due to the Fukushima disaster, but luckily there have been no deaths or cases of radiation sickness from the nuclear accident. Even to this day, approximately 43,000 residents are unable to return to their homes due to the nuclear disaster. The Fukushima incident is an example of how weather disasters can result in nuclear power plant issues, even if they are accounted for in protocols. During the earthquake, the reactors at the Fukushima incident were automatically shut down, and subsequent inspection showed no significant damage to any from the earthquake. The damages to the power supplies and cooling systems were caused by the large tsunami that followed after the earthquake, which would have been hard to plan against due to the destructive power of the waves. It is unfortunate that when working with nuclear power plants, unavoidable natural disasters as well as minuscule mistakes can result in environmental damage that lasts for decades. 4 months following the Fukushima disaster, the German parliament voted to phase out nuclear energy altogether by 2022. Many countries followed Germany's initiative, such as Switzerland and Japan, by decommissioning many nuclear power reactors. In the United States, the Fukushima incident led the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to conduct reviews for all of the nuclear power plants in the country, which raised many safety concerns. Even after the Fukushima disaster, approximately 19% of the energy produced in the United States came from nuclear power plants in 2021. Taking a look at public approval of nuclear energy before the Fukushima disaster, a Gallup poll in 2010 showed a 62% favorability to nuclear energy. Subsequent Gallup polls related to nuclear energy showed a general decline in the favorability towards nuclear energy, reaching a low of 44% favorability in 2016. In 2022, an updated poll indicated that favorability for nuclear energy in the United States was at approximately 51%, which is higher than 2016 but lower than 2010. According to the United States Office of Nuclear Energy, current challenges that nuclear energy faces in regards to public perception include historical nuclear events, the storage and disposal of nuclear waste, the lengthy construction and regulation times of new power plants, affordability of new construction projects, and high operational costs. All of these challenges that inhibit the public opinion of nuclear energy need to be addressed in order for the public to gain a higher trust in the future of nuclear power's role in a sustainable future. Given the advantages and pitfalls of nuclear energy, it is no wonder why the issue is a polarizing topic. Many advocates preach of its ability to produce clean energy on a large scale, but environmentalists raise concerns regarding the risk to public health and environmental safety. Even with the downsides of nuclear energy, the United States is moving forward with its implementation of nuclear energy across the country as a solution to the burning of fossil fuels. It is clear that nuclear energy is here to stay for the foreseeable future. Its introduction into the worldwide power grid will help reduce CO2 emissions and reduce the effects of global warming. While replacing fossil fuels with nuclear energy brings a variety of environmental positives for air pollution and climate change, nuclear waste and power plants bring with them a new set of environmental issues that need to be addressed to create a sustainable energy future.